I've been here going into my 13th year now. Jenny and I came here in 2011, and we like it here. I've been relatively active, not as active as people like Don Stishon and can't always remember all these names here, but there are people here who have contributed a great deal of time to this place, and they are to be commended and not criticized. But I was on the food committee and recently got off of that because we put new blood there, and I did all the video for a while. And some of you have looked at the video, and the video was successful only because of people like you. They were gracious enough, all amateurs, including myself. My videography was a self-taught. Started when my Jenny gave me a movie camera when we got married, and then we just progressed from there. But it was all self-taught, and editing became self-taught, and it's been a great period of time in my life, and I just wanted to mention that. It's at the tail end of my life, of course, but it was a good thing, and it's the people here. The people here just make it so great, and I've been thankful I'm here. So it's getting pretty close to 2 o'clock. My formal presentation will be informal. What I've tried to do, I'll carry you through my period of life as briefly and quickly as I can, because we got 96 years to put together in 1 hour, and that's a hard job. And people like Mark Hopkins know that because they're so busy and been so active, and they write so many books and all that. I've never had that experience. I'm sure that's a great experience. But anyway, it's 2 o'clock. I'd like a show of hands right off the bat. How many people here believe in miracles? Raise your hand. Oh, that's good, because I do too. And there are things that happen in my life, and I'm glad I saw those hands, because I'm sure it happened in your life. Miracles do happen. Sometimes we don't know that they're miracles, but they happen. So let's get busy. I was born in Detroit, 13109 James Street, northeast Detroit. My maternal grandparents' home, and my mother and father and my uncle. They're immigrants. All those people that I mentioned are immigrants. They came to the United States, not all together, but they came the same year, but not all together, 1924. And that was an Italian household. That was an Italian household. I grew up in that. They ate Italian, they talked Italian, they read Italian, they drank Italian. It was an Italian household. My grandfather and my father would make hundreds of gallons of wine a year for self-use. And I learned how to do that. But anyway, but I became bilingual, of course, naturally. I learned to talk Italian before I learned to talk English. And so when I used to go out and play when I was a little kid, I got into all kinds of altercations, because at first I didn't know what they were saying or understand what they were saying, and we were in a melting pot neighborhood. We were not in an Italian neighborhood, and I just had to learn English, and I learned it pretty quick. Well, I went to elementary school. I didn't know how to talk English very well, and I could read Italian. I wasn't writing it yet, but I could read Italian. I spoke it very fluently. So anyway, when I went to grade school, that was a problem, because, no, I'm jumping ahead to another school. In grade school, I did very well. My academics were very good. My family encouraged me to do good in school, and I did good, and I ended up being double promoted twice. But that's not a good thing. Nowadays, I wasn't developing properly socially and all that, but in those days, my mother and dad were proud of that, and they thought that was wonderful, but I found out that was a real problem and created problems for me. But nowadays you got honor classes and advanced classes, and they take care of all that. So, but I had a problem. I had a problem in grade school, because I was finishing my work in class before everybody else was done, and I created disturbance. I was talking all the time, and I still do talk too much, you know that. All of you that know me, And that got me into trouble, and I come home with these unsatisfactory grades in behavior, which had to do with the fact that I disrupted the class and this and that. And when my mother found out that it was because I talked too much, she said to me one time on a card at the end of a card marking period, she said, "Jerry, the next time you come home with a mark like that, I'm going to send you to school with your mouth taped up." Well, you know what happened the next semester, or the next card marking? I had the same thing, and I came home with I came home with that kind of mark, and she's a woman of her word. She taped my mouth. Now, I went to school like that, and that created a lot of problems. They didn't know what was the matter, and they wouldn't take it off my mouth because they didn't know whether it was an injury or this. And finally, Mr. Earhart, the principal, takes me home. And he goes up the front porch. My mother comes to the door and says, "Oh, what's the matter, Mr. Earhart?" "Well, Jerry's got this tape, and it's creating a problem. We don't know what it is." "Well, that's because he talks too much." Well, he starts to laugh. And he says, "Miss Polsnoy, you can't do that. It's creating a problem. You got to resolve that a different way." So she says to him, "Mr. Earhart, when Pete, my dad, comes home, he and I will take care of it. Leave him here with me." And I stopped talking in school. Anyway, I'm going through grade school, elementary school, and I'm doing well and all that sort of stuff. And so I don't get all mixed up here. And so I finished grade school. And my dad was a person that worked 2 jobs all the time, morning till night, and that impressed me, working. It gave me an ethic about something that a lot of people don't have today. But anyway, so I finished school, and what am I going to do this summer? Well, I got to get a job. So I went over to Ramona Valenteria. Ramona Valenteria was a store, or a retail outfit in the Ramona Theater Building. And the Ramona Theater Building, multiple stories, had lawyers, doctors, professional people. But on the first floor, ground floor, were all real retail people, barbershop, restaurant, and this place, and a shoe place, yeah, shoes, furniture. I can't remember them all right now, but anyway. And so I went in to see the Greek, Mr. Patrick. "I want a job." He said, what can you do?" I said, "I don't know what I can do, but whatever you teach me, I'll do. You just teach me." He said, "You ever shine shoes?" This place had clothes cleaning and pressing, laundry service, shoe repair, hat cleaning and blocking. Some of you know those kind of places from the years ago, right? And in the back of the store, there was a pressing machine and the cleaning for the hats. But at the back side of the store, there was this great big 7-chair shoe shine stand. So he taught me how to shine shoes. And I even got my brother involved in it. And in those days, everybody got their shoe shine. They would come in, and we worked there Friday nights and all day Saturday. And during the summer when I was off, I would work cleaning hats and all that other stuff. He gave me $1 an hour for that. But the shoe shine, the shine of the shoes was 10 cents a shine. He bought all the equipment. He bought all the supplies. Well, we had 7 people at a time sometimes, my brother and I. 7 black, 7 brown, mix them up. And they were waiting in line. I'd come home with pockets full of change because flip me a quarter, keep the change. I was keeping 15 cents, the house was getting a dime. I made a lot of money in 7 years. I really did. My mother put it all away. So that's the way it went in grade school and the Ramona Valenteria and work. Now, I graduate and I go to high school. I'm 11 and a half years old. What a catastrophe that was. That was a real catastrophe. I'm socially immature. I'm with kids that are sometimes in classes, some of them 2 to 3 years older than me. I don't know the first thing about anything. I don't take part of any extracurricular activities. I don't join any clubs. For me, it's a college prep course and work, because I did work all through high school too. Through high school. And anyway, as we went along, I forgot a cute story. And I go to late Latin class, and I'm there late, bang. And Dr. Reitley says, as I come in and I stand by the door, he looks at me and he says, "What's your name?" "Jerry Polsnoy." "What are you here for?" They finally got my schedule straightened up. "I'm sorry, I'm 3 days late for Latin." Okay, he says, now tell me again, what's your name? I said, Jerry Bolsonaro. 3 times he asked me that. Funny, he said, that's not your name. In this class you will be known as Jeremiah. He browbeat me for that whole semester. I almost flunked. He gave me a D. That's the first D I ever had, and the last D I ever had any place. But the next semester I thought I'd get somebody else. You know what happened? I got him. And I got him for the next year. For the whole 2 years of Latin I had him, and he gave me A's the rest of the year. I didn't understand what was going on, and I'll tell you what, part of it was, he'd make fun of me. He'd come over and say, Maloney. Well, that in Italian, full of seeds, you know? And I was mixing my Italian and my Latin. My Italian was good, my Latin was good, but you can't mix them together in school. I'm in college prep, and I've had this problem with age, you know, and all that sort of stuff. So I finally make it. I get to 3.5 years of high school. My counselor calls me down. He says, you're going to graduate. This 4,000 student school used to have midterms. They would graduate in the winter. They'd always graduate in summer and winter. They had 2 classes a year. And you're going to graduate with the midterms. And I said, I can't graduate with the midterms. I haven't even made it, you know, I haven't made any arrangements to go to college. He said, well, you don't have to worry about that. He says, you got over 120 credits. You got to go. We're not going to keep you here. So no, he said, you can't stay. And so I said, well, what do I do? He said, well, go to Wayne University. Wayne University, big university, downtown Detroit. All kinds of schools, medical school, dental school, law school, engineering school, teachers school, everything. They had the whole thing. It was a great school. But I couldn't matriculate, so it was too late to do that. I hadn't applied. So he said, just go down there and take some courses in a non-matriculated fashion, and then when you apply, they'll let you in and you can transfer and you'll be all set. Well, I said, okay, that sounds like a good idea. But in the meantime, I'm talking to my dad about school, colleges, universities. And he says to me, Wayne, a good school? No, you know, I can't do his accent, but a good school? I said, one of the best. I said, I told him good school. He said, and I said, but you know, I've been thinking about maybe going to Michigan State. Now, those were the 3 good schools, biggest schools in Michigan. You folks from Michigan know that back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, you know, in those years. And so he says, well, what do you want to go to Michigan State, University of Michigan for? Well, I said, you know, he says, well, you know, you stay here, you got a clean bed every night, you eat mama's food, she does all your laundry, you ride the trolley to school, you don't have to go to Michigan or Michigan State. Well, I finished and graduated Bachelor of Science at Michigan with a major in chemistry and biology. Anyway, so, when I'm at the university, I work, okay? So these are where I had my fun years, you say, because a lot of things happen to you when you have a job, you know, all kinds of life happens to you. So I start up, I get a job, nursing department, orderly. Orderlies came under nursing department. My first job is to go up on 4 Hudson, which is the indigent section. There's 12 bed wards on this side, 12 bed wards, male and female. So on the male side, the nurse says, your first job is to give an enema. I said, an enema? I don't even, you know, in Italian, I don't even know the word in Italian. So anyway, yeah, I got to give an enema. And I said, well, this is my first day on the job. Oh, well, then Tom will break you in. That's what he's up here, another orderly. That's why he's here. So he takes me down, he shows me the equipment, he fills it all up, and he puts the tube together, and we go down to see this patient, and he showed me how to do an enema. But I want to tell you that you know, that's kind of funny, but I learned a lot working in that hospital. I did all kinds of jobs for 4 years, and it was a real learner. The nurses taught me more about medicine than that I learned in medical school sometimes. I mean, they were very helpful. And I worked as an orderly, I worked as an oxygen boy, I worked at a night reception desk, whatever they wanted to fill me in someplace, I'd always go take that job, whatever it was. Well, I think one of the most interesting jobs I had, one summer I was assigned to the night shift at the ambulance entrance. Now, we didn't have 9/11, we didn't have these ambulances riding around with EMTs and that sort of thing, you know, and ambulance, and doctors see a patient at home or know about a situation at home, serious, call the ambulance, and an ambulance, private ambulance, will bring them in. And some of them go home in an ambulance. Well, every hospital had a big ambulance entrance, a ramp, go down to the ground floor, and there was an elevator to take the patients upstairs. Well, besides being the keeper of that ambulance entrance door, I was also a night watchman, and I had the box, and I had to go get the keys around and push those keys in and record that. And I had a ring of keys. The ring was all keys for any place in the hospital. So one of the first few nights that I was there, on the outside of the door, this big door, and I go up to this little panel. There are 3 gorgeous young women standing there. Now, I am a young teenager yet. I am not anywhere. I'm still undeveloped. So anyway, I index the door goes up, and I said, "What are you doing here? Can I help you?" "Well, we're nursing students from the nursing school. The hospital had a 3-year program, and they used to stay in the nurses' home. They lived there, and they were late, and they couldn't go in the front door because they would get in trouble. And they knew that there was this back door down in the second basement, and that they probably asked other people to do it too, but I didn't know anything about it. But anyway, could you let us in?" "Yeah, sure, I'll let you go." What's your name?" "Jerry." I don't remember what their names were. Well, a couple nights later, "Hey, Jerry. Hey, Jerry." Same 2 girls. Well, it got to be different 2 girls, and it went on and on. I mean, it did all summer. I was letting those ladies in there. And it took me about 5 years to determine that I missed the boat. I missed the boat. It was beyond me. Anyway, I graduated, as I said, from college, and I applied for medical school. And there was another job that I did at the hospital. This is funny. In my 4th year of the university, I see they advertise for somebody that wants to be an assistant in the animal lab. Well, that sounds very scientific, and I'm a biology and chemistry major. So I go see Dr. Corrigan. Dr. Corrigan said, "You can't do that. You're going to school." "Oh, but during the day." And I said, "Well, I talked to Bill Decker, my friend, who's also pre-med, and he's a good student, and we worked our schedules out, and we can cover it." He'd go off, and I'd come on. There's always going to be somebody there doing the work. He says, "Well, if you can guarantee that, I'll hire him," because I was at that time had been an employee of the hospital, so he knew all about me anyway. So anyway, we're working there, and it's interesting work. You get to work with the doctors. They're doing the work with the animals, and we're doing research, and we're keeping records and data and all that, which was very nice. It was a very good deal. But everybody knows about the Ashheim Zondek test. Raise your hand if you know. That's the old rabbit test for pregnancy. The one where you sacrifice the rabbit. And they used to keep the rabbits in the laboratory, in the animal laboratory, and then when they would do the concentration down in the lab of the pregnant women's urine, they'd bring it up and inject, and then we'd sacrifice the rabbits and call them out. So, because when a rabbit ovulates, when a rabbit copulates, they ovulate, because during copulation, that particular hormone, they're stimulated, their body produces that hormone, and it produces ovulation. And that's why rabbits have quick litters, a lot of them, So that's the test, okay? Now, Railway Express, a little bit like FedEx, this was a Railway Express. We used to buy rabbits from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and have them sent over from Grand Rapids, and then we do the test. So one day they were threatening a strike, and so I went down to Dr. Corrigan. I said, "What are we going to do about this?" And he said, "I think the best thing we can do is just order a double supply of rabbits. Instead of 2 crates, get 4 crates," which we did. And Bill happened to come over for lunch. He was off school, and he walked over, and we were going to have lunch together. And the rabbits came, and I said, "Well, help me unload these rabbits into this room." They had cleared a dog room, taken all the cages out, cleaned it up, washed the floor, and put all straw in there. So for the rabbits that we couldn't put in the cages, because we only had so many cages, we had to put them on the floor in that room. That's the surplus rabbits. I closed the door. It was a slotted door, wooden. I closed the door and I said to Bill, "What if there's a buck rabbit in there?" I no sooner said that, it had a little white rabbit, hippity hop, hippity hop, hippity hop. You tried to find that rabbit, we never found him. We went down Dr. Corrigan. We couldn't use those extra rabbits because we didn't know whether they had copulated or not. So anyway, serious work. It was serious work, but it was a lot of fun and it was a lot of learning. Okay, so I graduated in 1948, and during that third year of my university, I got reintroduced to the love of my life. I'd known Jenny when we were both, little, and our families used to travel back and forth and visit, and we'd play fiddly sticks and pick up tiddlywinks and pickup sticks. And so we went, and here she comes to a bowling alley where her dad, we're in this Italian-American league on Sunday morning after church, and she comes over and I see her. I hadn't seen her for years. I knew about her, but I never seen her. Wow. And what'd she want? She wanted me to escort her to her senior prom. She was graduating from an all-girls Catholic high school. She was graduating, and I was I was going to be into my fourth year, pretty soon. And that's when it started. We dated. I told her that day. She asked me if I would do that, and I said, "Well, you go home and have dinner. I'll go home and have dinner, and I'll come over later and we'll discuss it." So we talked about it. That led to an engagement over time, and that led to a marriage, 1949, which produced 4 children, which I'm all very proud of. So now we're out of medical school, and I applied to, we're out of university and I'm in medical school. And I think I hate to say this, but for your sake, I thought I cold-cocked it. I thought I was in, I had high MCAT scores. I knew all the doctors, not all the doctors, but I knew a lot of doctors from Harper who were very familiar in the medical profession in Detroit. But I didn't make it. I didn't make it to Michigan. Well, I didn't want to go there anyway. It was too much for me. I applied to a Jesuit school because I'm a Catholic. I thought maybe I'll make it. But you got to remember, those years, the year I'm talking about is 1948. We've got a lot of veterans on the GI Bill who are home. Mm-hmm. And I'm not denying it. I think that's a great thing. But the competition to get in medical school, the cost wasn't very high, but the competition, the average cost of medical school, 48 to 50 something, was $500 to $700 a year. My tuition when I ended up getting in was $600 a year. And today it's $45,000, $50,000, depends on which school you want to go to. But anyway, the competition was great, and I didn't feel so bad about not getting in because those guys ahead of me, they deserved it ahead of me. But I did get admitted. I did get accepted with a caveat to Kansas City University. Well, that meant I had to go to Kansas City, Missouri. And so we weren't married. We were engaged, and we talked about it, Jenny and I, and he said, "We're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to accept that, and in that time, we're going to get married." And I went to work at Dodge, Maine, worked for $1.50 an hour for a year, saved a lot of money. Well, I thought a lot of money. Nowadays, it's nothing. But anyway, and we went away to school then in 1949. We went to Kansas City. So, but again, I worked that whole year. That I took some courses at the university just to keep up on top of things. I'm going to shuffle these over because I didn't reshuffle them again. So the first year at school is the first 2 years of medical school. Is nothing more than bookwork. It's because it's in block. So you take anatomy, biology, anatomy, bacteriology, microbiology, and biologic biochemistry. They're all the basic sciences, and that's all you do is go to school, just like any place, and study and hit the books and take the tests and pass the test. And I continued to do well. But it gave me a chance to work. I didn't work much, but Jenny got a job as a teller I went to work in a pharmacy making reagents for lights, photospectrometers, spectrophotometers. On Saturdays, I'd go there and make a little money there, and whatever. And then I worked in the first summer, I worked in a factory. I worked in a house trailers factory. So that first year went by pretty good, and then the second year, Jenny got pregnant. Our rhythm system failed, and so no, I'm honest. We were using that sort of thing, and we just missed the boat. You know, I was a hot Italian, so I guess it was not really. But anyway, she got pregnant, and she had to quit work, and so now we weren't having any money coming in, and the reserves were being used for tuition, or was going to be used for tuition and living expenses and so forth. And unbeknownst to me, I didn't know what was going on. The Italian American club that I belonged to in Detroit, that my father and my father-in-law belonged to, and unbeknownst to them, they started a fundraiser for me. And I got a check one day. I didn't know anything about it. I got an envelope, got a check that covered my whole second year tuition, books, and fees. Now that's another miracle, another blessing, another thing. So somebody's kind of watching over us, you know. So we got through the second year, but we had to move because the place we were living in, the baby wouldn't fit. It just wasn't going to be good. We got got an apartment in Dr. McGrath's home. Dr. McGrath was chairman of orthopedics. He had a 3-story house. Second floor, he made two apartments, one for 2-bedroom for his mother and his sister, and this little tiny apartment for us on the backside. So we moved in there and got good rent, and we got by pretty good. And anyway, at the end of that, yeah, that's right. I haven't missed anything. And Michael was born. Yeah, okay. At the end of the second year, Jenny had gone back to work because with that apartment, eventually Mrs. McGrath, the older Mrs. McGrath, offered to be our babysitter right in-house. We didn't have to go out, and it worked out good. So we finished that. Now the third and fourth year of medical school is all clinic. You're on all the various clinical services. You have to go to. You're on the lab. You're in the hospital, night, day. They assign different times. It's a clerkship. It's not an internship. It's a clerkship. So you can't work. Okay. So Jenny kept working. She just kept plugging away. Anyway, I'm on my first service in a clinic. It's OB-GYN. Can you imagine that? I eventually become an OB-GYN, gynae guy. And this gentleman, a classmate of mine, he asked me to cover him one afternoon because he had to go down and get checked in at the crippled children's office. I said, what are you going there for? He says, I'm on a grant from crippled children's. They're paying my whole tuition, they're paying my books, my fees, and I even get a stipend. Whoa, I said, that is really something. He said, well, by that time we were even talking like doctors. He said, I know you got that Erb's palsy in your right arm. And yeah, I said, because my mother had shoulder dystocia and a birth injury and pulled too hard, and cervical plexus gets injured. But I said, I never had any trouble doing anything, as a child, as a young adult in school, and all the things that I had to do in school. And I was dissecting in the laboratory, in anatomy. In fact, I prosected the female. We had one female body, and somehow I got chosen to the prosector, the student dissector, to help everybody else on the female body. Anyway, so he said, well, it sounded interesting on us, so I made a call to Detroit. And sure enough, the lady said, yeah, I think you could qualify. Well, I filled out all the papers, everything went through. I had to get a physical exam in Missouri. They said I had this problem. It's not a problem for me, but I had this situation. So they paid junior year, senior year. I was buying equipment because at the clinic she had to buy things like a stethoscope and a sigmometer and all that. They paid for all that stuff, And I was like everybody else. I was kind of shove a little extra in there once in a while, but that's another miracle. That it came to pass. So we get out of we graduate, and I got an internship contracted for in Detroit in 1953. I graduated I won't tell you how high I graduated. You can ask Mary Jane on that. Anyway, we graduated and we go to Michigan. We go to this hospital that has a good, big OB service. 5,000 plus deliveries a year for many years. The only hospital that did any more was the Catholic hospital, naturally. So, anyway, I get this internship. We go back to Detroit. I get paid $75 a month as an intern, room and board. Well, I don't need room and board because we're living with my in-laws, who's taking care of Michael, and Jenny goes to work at a car dealer, another job, and out she goes, bringing home money, put money. We never seemed to have any, but she was working. Maybe she wasn't making that much. Well, anyway, that was the internship here, and we got through that pretty good. And so I got to change now. I finished the internship, and I had successfully been approved and signed a contract for an OB-GYN residency, and I was going to start that. Well, the internship finished the end of June, and you start or May, whatever, this summer, but the opening for the residency didn't open up until the fellow was through in September. So I had 3 months. 3 months. Well, what am I going to do? Well, I don't know what I'm going to do. So Dr. Latos, one of the ladies, had a family practice in Hazel Park. She comes in and she says, Harry, her husband, was also a physician, and we're going to take a 3-month vacation. We married late in medical school. We didn't have a honeymoon, and we're going to take a 3-month vacation to Greece. They're both Greeks, Harry and Mary Latos. And so I'd like you to cover my practice for 3 months, and I'll give you $1,000 a month, $3,000. That's another, But I got to tell you a little story about that 3 months, okay? Again, very early in that situation, I'm staying with, we're living with my in-laws, and the answering service has my number. So people would call the office number, and then the answering service would, if it was a severe thing or something, they would refer them to me. They would give them my phone number. Well, the phone rings. Hello, Dr. Bolsnelli. Come quick, my mother's having a heart attack. Hang up. If Jenny was alive today, she's probably the only one that can verify. It is the truth. I'm stewing. I don't know what to do. I got an 8. I'm a type A personality. I got to get it there. And so I'm back and forth. And Jenny says, well, where are you going? She saw me start. I'm going to the office. Well, what are you going to the office for? There's nobody there. I said, I'm going to the office. When I get there, I'll call you back and see if they've called me. Besides that, the office has got to be nearby that home because this is a neighborhood practice. It wasn't in a big center or anything, it was on a corner. So I drive to it took me about 20 minutes. I get over there and as I approach the office, I get on DeQuinder and I go up near 10 Mile Road and I see something flashing over here, something catches my eye, and I look over there and down this street of houses, not too far, I see a crowd of people, no, not a crowd, but a number of people, and they flashing flashlights. And I said, maybe that's where I should be. So I said, no chance, I might as well go take a look. And I went down. As soon as I get there, this guy comes over to the window. Are you the doctor? I said, yes, I'm the doctor. Well, then he says, come quick, we got to go in the house. We go in the house, and the patient's in bed. And I walk in there, and she's lying in bed, and she doesn't look like she's in pain. She's not moaning. She's not, the color was good. I went over and took her pulse, and her skin temperature was nice and warm. She wasn't sweaty or diaphoretic. And I said, I better start examining her. So I picked my bag, stethoscope, chest, lungs, heart, everything's normal. Rhythm is good, no abnormal rhythm, no murmurs, nothing, no rowels, no sounds in her lungs. So, okay, then I start checking her abdomen. And I'm palpating and I'm pushing down, checking liver and spleen and all that stuff. And she's not complaining because I'm pushing pretty hard. So then I said, well, I'll do a neurologic. I take out my little rubber mallet, boom, 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 all of her extremity, all of her reflexes seem normal. She's not spastic. She's not flaccid. So I'm going to do an up on an eye, retina, look in the back of her eye. I can't say the word, I'm talking too fast. Anyway, I take this thing out and I get it together and I go no. And every time I try to lift her eyelid, she put it up. She wouldn't let me open her eye. I did open it enough to see that her pupils were equal. So you want to look at the back of the eye. A lot of people don't realize that. The ophthalmoscope and ophthalmoscopic examination is an important part. And we were taught physical diagnosis. Those days we didn't have ultrasound. I'm not saying it's better. It was better then, but we didn't have ultrasound. We didn't have the fancy EKG machines. We didn't have all that. We did it with our eyes and our ears and our fingers and what little equipment we had. So the ophthalmoscope was an important instrument. You look in the eye and you can see the retina, you can see vessels. Well, you can see if a person's got high blood pressure, you can see that in the vessels. And if they've got diabetes, diabetic retinitis, you can see that. So I'm looking for, because he didn't have any information for me. I said to him early, I said, your mother chronically ill? No, she ain't never been ill. That's what you did. So anyway, and all of a sudden it dawned on me, a lecture that we had in school, and I can't remember whether it was the psychiatrist that did it or somebody did, internal medicine, about this kind of a situation. What I forgot to tell you though, when I came through that crowd, I wasn't paying attention, but I was hearing, Mom's had a heart attack. No, she ain't had a heart attack. Mom's sick. Mom's not sick. They were arguing among themselves. Well, then after I examined her, all of a sudden it hit me and I got this flashback from school. So I said, I take my bag, I take out this bottle of clear fluid, and I make a big show out of filling this syringe, and I got to have her just as much, this much, nothing, and now I'm going to inject her. I'm saying this out loud now. Now I'm going to inject her, and she'll rouse up, and within 5 minutes, I said that, which I wish I never had, but I said that. So I got one eye on the patient, one eye on my clock, my watch. And within 5 minutes, she woke up. She stirred. Oh, boy, what happened? What happened to me? I feel real good now. What happened? Well, I said, you fainted or something, and I just gave you something to wake you up. But I said, I'm not done because I'm really not sure what your problem is. I'm saying this for the family as much as anybody else. I said, I really don't know what your problem is. So you bring her in on Monday, and I'm going to get an EKG. We had an EKG in the office. We did have an EKG there. I'm going to take an X-ray of her lungs, and I'm going to do some blood tests. She had one of those like spectrophotometers, and we're going to do some blood tests and see what her sugar is, what her lipids are. And okay, doctor, thank you very much. And I get out of there, and I can't help but laugh all the way home, and also feel so damn lucky that it turned out that way, So Monday morning, there enough, she comes to the office. And the nurses are laughing at me when I'm telling the story before she got there. But when she got there, they said, she comes here every month. She gets a shot of B12. Dr. Latis has never found anything wrong with her. So she comes in and they put her in the exam room. I go in there and she said, and I want to do some other things. And before I do much of anything, she says, Doctor, I want you to be sure that you tell Dr. Latos what you gave me, because I've never had anything that made me feel that good. I'll give you one guess as to what it was. Sterile water. Okay. So that's another part of the little story. And now I do my residency, of course, and now I'm a resident. I get $100 a month. Big deal. $150 my second year, and then I got to be lucky. I was lucky. I was chosen as a chief resident, and I got $200 a month. And the chief resident is an important person because they get to, they do a lot of things, and you're the boss around things, So anyway, as a chief resident, one of the things that I have to do, of course, is to take. I have to do what they call your first case. All through your residency, when you're working in gen surgery, the doctors are teaching you, they're showing you how to do this, and they're showing you the anatomy and all that, and you learn how to do the technique. Of course, you study it too, but in the books, but you learn. But when you're assigned to that position, you're the so-called graduation is you have to do a first surgery, skin to skin. That means you open, and nobody does anything but hold retractors for you. You do everything, both sides, and then you close the skin. Well, that's the first case, but they don't tell you when they're going to do that. You know you're going to get it the first week or two of your program there, when you get to be the chief resident. So we're in there in the surgery room, and the nurses, now the right-handed people operate on the right-hand side, left-handed people operate on the left-hand side. I'm left-handed by choice and by necessity, but I can do surgery. I got no problem. I was a good surgeon. But anyway, the nurse, when Dr. Matthews says, this is Dr. Pulcinelli's case, that means she's got to take all the instruments and bring them around on this side, because they're arranged in the way you use them and order of use and all that. And I'm getting more nervous, you know. I'm skilled enough that I know I can do it, but you know, the time I'm waiting, everybody's watching. And finally she gets it all set, so I get my hand out for the first instrument. She slaps that scalpel in my hand, and I get over there, and I'm shaking. Tremor. And so Dr. Matthews, he's got his glove hand, and he goes over and puts his hand on my hand. He said, Jerry, if you don't know how, look like you know how. and everybody laughed, and that kind of took care of everything. And so I did the case. It was a hysterectomy, fibroids, uterine, and it was a pretty good one, but I did it, and everything went well. Now, medicine, doctors teach. Doctors, I think if you look in the dictionary someplace, doctors means teacher or something. Is that right, Mark? Mark?
That's right.
Is that right? Okay. Oh, there's one back there. There's a doctor back there. He's my friend, Hugh McCullough. You know, he told me one time, you're an OB-GYN guy and you're this and that. He says, I did C-sections. I said, yeah, but you did the ones that they couldn't have any more babies after you did a section. He was a fine family physician in Michigan, Dr. McCullough. Some of you know him. He's a friend of mine, so I can tease him like this. Anyway, back to the story. I do this. I'm teaching. So we got an intern, first woman intern we had. And I'm in the doctor's room with one of the doctors, and I hear this woman being wheeled in. She was being wheeled in on a wheelchair, and you don't have to be a doctor. You know she's in active labor. I mean, you can tell when they start acting like that. Something's wrong anyway, you know something, or something's happening. So anyway, I run in and I see what's happening, and I look at the board where we used to put the record. Well, she had admitted her and put 1 centimeter, not engaged, put the fetal heart tones, and I said, Hugh, 1 centimeter, not engaged. They're not even in labor, right?
Say that again?
He can't hear very well. Anyway, that finding, they're nowhere near in labor hardly, and that, you know, so the secretary who copies all this stuff off this blackboard that we write there, they put it on the chart, and then we go over it and sign it later. She says, you better go in there, Dr. Pulcinelli. She says, that woman's having her baby. I says, I agree with you. So we go in there, and I said, Pat, she was in the hall. I said, come on down here. I want to go over this patient with you. And, well, I just checked her. I said, well, something's happening. I think you should be in there. So she goes in there first, and she goes over to the patient. The patient is hollering, you know, and she's pushing, and oh, you know how that is, ladies. I mean, some of you do anyway. She puts her hand on the abdomen, and she says, now don't worry, Mrs. Jones. She says, we know where that baby is at all times. And she says, well, doctor, if you pick up the sheet, it's between my knees. Whoa! Well, that's where it was. She became a pathologist, by the way, just as I said. Thank God she became a pathologist. Never had to take care of human being again. She was a good pathologist. She became very good pathologist. So, Stephen is born. My girls were born during my early years in practice. So we ended up with 4 kids, and that, just so you know, I think I told you I had 4 kids. So, that hospital, I want to tell you that hospital used to do 4,000 or 5,000 deliveries a year, and busy all the time. Sometimes you had 10, 15 patients in labor, and But we learned a lot of obstetrics because we saw it. The first day I was a resident, first year a resident, the first 24 hours, because we're 24 hours on, 24 hours off, there were 10 deliveries that day, that 24 hours. And those 10 deliveries, they were the main headings in the textbook, it seemed like. Cesarean section, we had some preeclampsia, we had this, boy, we had a breach that day. Boy, I came out of that day worked off. I was tired. Anyway, I got to keep going here because got some cover to tell. So, another story that I had, this is funny because I laugh because it's been kind of edited by Mary Jane. I call it the case of the flying object. The patient is in the delivery room, and she's huffing and puffing and ready to deliver. I mean, she's getting, pushing, and her bag of waters breaks. A lot of times they don't break until late. Sometimes you break them ahead of time, but earlier. But the bag of waters breaks, and behind the bag of waters is this flying object. Hits me in the head. I look down at the floor. I'm scrubbed. I can't pick it up. It's a diaphragm. Finally, when we got it up, the nurse picked it up and showed it to the patient. The patient says, "Now that's where it's been." True story. True story. I'm not making these up. So you run into a lot of things when you're being an OB-GYN. And I think, though, the most important thing about obstetrics is that we all believe in miracles, and the biggest miracle is creation. When you think about two little microscopic, you can't see them without a microscope, join and you get a multi-million cellular object, billions of cells. The human being, well, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. It beats a computer. I mean, we got more wires and circuits in our head than the computer has. Well, anyway, and I think that's one of the most wonderful creations. Every time I delivered a baby, you just can't help how important it is, of course, but it's such a wonderful feeling. And unfortunately, once in a while, you get into a tumble. Something happens, but for the most part, it was a happy time. But in obstetrics, we did a procedure called PPPs. Some of you ladies that had babies many years ago, I won't say how many, but many years ago, had to go through what we call Demerol and scopolamine. And those people get kind of wild, they're amnesic, they don't remember what happens, and they're screaming and hollering. But with planned painless parturition, the senior men in our department, who I, of course, trained under, the 6 certified senior men in our department were the faculty. They taught all the residents, and they had a procedure called this planned painless parturition. By examining the cervix at the end of the pregnancy, near the end of the pregnancy, and you get skilled at it, you can get a good idea when they're ready to deliver. They're going to be within a week or a few days. You can tell. And so they bring them in, not in labor, set them up for labor and delivery, start an epidural, and then with a very, very dilute solution of Pitocin, you start contractions. After they've been given the epidural, then their contractions continue. You can turn the Pitocin off, but it just gets them started, 5 drops a minute, 7. We never go over 10, 15 drops a minute. And they get them in labor, and then they go and you deliver. Okay, and the hospital had a reputation for that because it was painless. You didn't have labor pain, so we got that. One of the reasons we were popular. But I did hypnosis. One of our doctors was always looking for something new, and he took up hypnosis, and he taught us how to use hypnosis in obstetrics and gynecology. So I delivered babies with hypnosis. I treated menstrual cramps, morning sickness, back trouble. It's helpful. Not a show, it's helpful. It's helpful. So, you don't believe me, huh?
Jerry, I believe everything you say.
I know that's not true. No, seriously. People would always just say, well, they want me to show off hypnosis. No, I don't want to do that. For me, it was a part of my armamentarium, and we used it discreetly, and it worked. And we do have records to show that. Well, anyway, so that was part of our, a little different in our hospital, but not that it's any better or worse than any place else, but it was a little different. So we finished the residency, and I'm standing in the doctor. I'm not finished. I'm standing in a doctor room, and a doctor comes up to me and says to me, "I'd like to talk to you." Dr. Happel's the chairman of staff. He said, "I'd like to talk to you, Jerry." Well, I said, "What do you want to say?" "No, hospital, there are ears in the hospital, you know. Yeah, there's stories all over." He says, "I'd like you to come to my office." Went to the office. He offers me a deal. He wants me in partnership with him, 50% partner. And here's the deal. He's going to turn over. He used to do 125 to 150 deliveries a year in those years. And he said, all my cases that I haven't delivered, they're going to be your cases. All the cases that I've delivered to come back again, they're going to be referred to you. They're going to be part of our practice, not just mine or just yours, but it's our practice. And you're going to take care of all the female problems that my patients have, my lady patients have. I'll send them to you because you're a specialist. You know how to do it better than I do. You know, that's it. But it sounded like a good deal. And he said, the only thing I need from you, I have to have you cover me every other week, every other day. I got to have the night off every other day, and you can have a night off every other day. And I also have to have every other weekend off because he bought a boat, and he wanted to be on a boat on that weekend. But I can't have every other day because he can't do my work, you see. My lady's going labor, my surgical problems come up. I can't get, unless I pay somebody to take my place, you know. But I said, well, what is this deal? Well, he said, I want you, it's going to be 50%. I said, well, it sounds pretty good. I said, well, what do I have to do to buy in? Because that's what everybody did. The guys that got in with somebody, they would have to buy in by some way or other. They pay off getting in. And he said, did I mention any money to you? No. He says, I don't want anything. You start tomorrow or whatever it was. You start whatever day you start. That day, we share expenses from the practice. We share income from the practice. He was taking a cut in pay right off the bat, 50%. And he says, and I think you and I will do well together. And he was a prince of a guy. He was chairman of the staff, a handsome, good-looking man. He had a couple of twins. He had twin boys. Just the kind of guy you want to know. I mean, as a person, he was just a great guy. So I went out to practice with him. Now, I bought this little house with the $3,000 that Dr. Latos gave me, and because I was going to go practice on the east side. And it was, he's excused. He already told me. What?
You got 8 minutes.
Well, I got about 8, maybe a little extra in 8 minutes if you want to stay. But anyhow, which are important. They're very important years. Anyway, I go work for him, and one of the first 3 nights I'm out there, I make 8 house calls. 8 house calls in one night because he was doing $7 each. That's big money. And so I come home that morning, and I said, Jenny, here's the office. Take a 1 mile radius and find us a house quick, because I'm not going to drive back and forth. We had intended to stay in that little house for a while. Well, that went like that for a while. But then, you know, I had this bug. I want to be a teacher. I wanted still to teach. And the hospital had a loose arrangement with clerks from medical school, and they wanted to develop a more formal relationship. So they developed they were going to develop a position called Director of Medical Education. And I heard about that, and I talked to the supervisor or CEO of the corporation. This corporation had 3 hospitals, and the big hospital was what we were talking about, and the main hospital. And this way, the students would come. Their 3rd year, every 3rd year student from that school came to our hospital for 3 months, and the hospital provided them room and board, but there was also a little training. Well, they wanted to make it more formal, so I had to develop a curriculum for them for those 3 months. I had to develop a faculty for them. I had to even do my own job description, because there was no job description. But we did that. But then I had to move my practice to the hospital office building, and that was a real serious problem because my friend, Dr. Apple, I had to leave him. I had to leave working with him. But he was a good guy. He said, if that job doesn't work out and you're unpleasant after 6 months, it's unpleasant for you, come on back and we'll start right over where you left off without a hitch. That's the kind of guy. But anyway, that's what happened. And so I went to work for the hospital. I did that for a while. And then all of a sudden, and Judy was working and Mother was babysitting and she was a car dealer employee. And she just kept working until I started making money. Well, when we got that practice opportunity, she stopped working because I told her, you're not working anymore. You know, that's the end of your work. So that was what happened then. And I joined a golf club. Oh, I took a fellowship. For 18 months with one of my trainers in infertility. They call it. It was then infertility. Now they call it reproductive medicine. The doctors that take care of women who have trouble getting pregnant, have trouble with their menstrual periods and that sort of thing. And so I did a fellowship. On 3 days a week, I go with him to his office or to the hospital. I trailed him around, and I learned a lot of stuff in that specialty, which I eventually got certified in 1961, and I finished my training. My official training was in the 57, and then 18 months, 58, 59, yeah, about 59. Anyway, so I got certified in 2 years because I had a lot of cases, because I inherited those cases from Dr. Apple's friend. And you had to have so much of this and so much of this, and I acquired those numbers. Then you got to take the exam. It's a written exam. You got to pass that. Then it's an oral exam, and then it's a practical. They come to the hospital and they watch you work for a couple, 3 days. So I did get certified in 1961, and I'm going along pretty good. And I learned how to play golf. I joined the country club. I learned how to curl. And I become a member of the curling club, and I ended up being president of both of those organizations, situations. And while I was president, the next year after I was president, I became I was chosen to be the national chairman for the United States Men's Curling Association National Championship, which we hosted in Detroit at the Cobo Arena, which is a big arena downtown Detroit. And things were going real good, you know. But then all of a sudden, at the corporation, I'm getting ahead of myself, getting a little ahead of myself. There was a time when I resigned from the hospital and from the corporation because they were pushing me more into administration, and I was getting away from obstetrics and more administration. So I resigned, and I went back into practice. And I joined a group, and because I was practicing in a different location, and so we did all that. And so while that time, after I got back in private practice, we had a group of 6 guys. We were really very busy, but things happened. One guy wanted to follow his heart. He was going with an administrator of a hospital in Detroit. She got a job in Phoenix, so he followed her. The other one wanted to go up in North Michigan and fish and hunt all the time, so we left. One guy, unfortunately, one of my best friends in the specialty, and almost a classmate of mine because we were residents a year apart, Frank, he died, and so we were left with a partnership, which is a marriage, and my partner we were not good partners, and so we quit, and I went back into private practice by myself, and 1980 came along, and when that split occurred, and what am I going to do? Well, I had property in Florida, and I said we could go practice in Florida, but I don't have a license. And we could stay in Detroit and see how practice goes. But I was getting older, you know, and so I said I'll go to the Air Force. And I tried to enlist in the Air Force, and because of a quirk, it was almost complete. I was going to go down to. They were going to put me in down at where the center of activity is in Tampa, Florida, down there. That big center down there. That's the center of all kinds of military. It was, but anyway, they had a clinic down there, and I knew Dr. De Palma down there, and I talked to him, and he says, we'll get you down here. I did. They had an OB-GYN. They don't have it anymore. Anyway, so the lieutenant that was doing all the arrangements, he got a phone call. Son, fell out of a tree, broke his arm, and he had to go home. He said to the sergeant, he said, get all the details together, and I'll finish them up when I come back. I probably won't be very long. This won't take very long. And he was. He came back, and he said, there's one thing I forgot to ask you. He said, do you have any malpractice cases open? I said, I don't even have a malpractice. I never had a malpractice case. And then I want to be honest. All of a sudden, I thought, Frank, the guy that died, he was working at another hospital, and we used to work down there to cover him down there. And there was one. He got sued for a case down there, but because now he was a member of our group, we all got enjoined. But nothing happened. It was late 50s, and so I said, well, you just got to get me a record of it. I said, I don't have a record of it. I'll look, but I know I don't have a record of it. I said, but we never even got served. We just knew about the case. But he said, well, I can't take you. DOD, there was a bad operator down in Bethesda who was trying to hide from a bunch of malpractice. He was a cardiac surgeon, got in trouble at the Naval Hospital down there, and because of that, and the government, the DOD, solved the problem by saying nobody with malpractice cases open is to be taken in enlistment. So now I don't take it. So I said, well, I'll go to Florida. I got property down there, but I don't have a license. Got a license. I studied for a year, got my license, never used it. First exam I walked into, you can't guess, OB and pediatrics. I had to take all the basic sciences, everything. I had 14 things I was being examined. OB, I go in there and I'm out in 20 minutes. Well, I'm smoking then. I went out, I smoked, and this young guy comes out and he says, hey, Pops. Hey, Pops. He's a resident, or something. Hey, Pops. He said, you had trouble that exam, hey? You had to quit early. He made me a little upset calling me Pops. I said, for your information, I said, I could have written that examination. He said, what do you mean? I'm a certified OB-GYN. Whoa, now he's upset. You raised the curve. You're going to raise the bell curve. We're all going to fail. But I got an 87. And everything else, I got over 90 on that doggone. They put all your grades on the back. I got the worst exam, 87 on OB. I says, I'm going to sue them. I'm going to appeal this because I know I got this thing straight. Well, anyway, I got a license and never used it. And while I'm in private practice by myself, MSU, Michigan State University, contacts me and wants me to teach OB-GYN in a certain section they had. They want me to go full-time. I said, no. I said, I can't take a cut in practice anymore. I said, I've done it so many times. And we just didn't want to do it. And so I taught at the university for 3 years at Michigan State University. I taught obstetrics and gynecology for 3 years in that block that they had it in. And so that's another thing that I also became, and they made me an assistant professor, but just a name only, But I did that for 3 years, and then I also was an executive director of a national OB-GYN society, and that was an experience, and I traveled and so forth. And so it goes on and on and on and on and so forth. In 1993, I'm 65, and I'm ready to hang up the hat. I was still, I retired from the practice. I sold my practice to the hospital. I retired. I was at one of the suburban hospitals, and they made me the medical director for turf battles and things like that, So doctors' problems, and I did that. But then I retired in '93 to Florida. Spent 18, 19 years in Florida. And I retired not because because I burned out, but I also owed it to Ginny. She worked a lot. And she raised the kids. I wasn't around and all that. So we're going down there, we're going to live a good life. We're both 65. And we had that nice place down there. Of course, she didn't last very long. She had a stroke. We came up here because of that in 2011. And I got involved with you folks. And it's been a pleasure. And I have one more blessing. I have to get excited about it. You all know who it is.